Hi, in this session we look at matrimonial cases, and the two paradigm examples are divorce and dissolution cases. When marriages need to be terminated, the parties will go through the divorce process. Similarly, when civil partnerships need to be terminated, the parties will go through a dissolution process. So you, as a prospective forensic accountant, need to understand this process because your services would usually be required. After understanding or having a quick overview of the process, you need to be quite specific in your understanding with regards to what you may be required by either of the parties or the courts. So I'll take you through the processes quickly. Just have a good overview of what the divorce or dissolution process is. Remember, we are not lawyers, so we are not really looking at the law as it relates to divorce or dissolution. We only want a good overview of the process. Right, so the way it goes is one of the parties to the marriage or the civil partnership will have to petition the court. Okay, and when the petition is brought, the judge will look at the grounds or the evidence provided before the divorce or the dissolution is granted. If we're talking about marriage relationship, the judge will look for any of these five pieces of evidence. So the judge will be checking to see if the petitioner, the person who's brought the request, can prove that the other party has been involved in adultery, unreasonable behavior, there's been a separation for 2 years, and the other party has provided consent that the divorce should proceed, or there's been 5-year separation, in which case consent is not required, or the petitioner can prove that they've been deserted. If it is not a marriage relationship, but it is rather a civil partnership, then the judge will not look for evidence of adultery. The judge would only look for evidence of any of these four. If the judge is satisfied that there is grounds for the divorce or the dissolution, then a copy of the petition will be sent to the respondent, that is, the other party to the relationship. The other party will have to acknowledge receipt of the petition and can either agree or contest the divorce or dissolution. Again, we're not going to go into the nitty-gritties of when and whether that will be granted or not. Let's assume that the respondent agrees. Then the court or the judge will have every right to pronounce the decree nisi. This is the first acknowledgement that the divorce or the dissolution procedure or process has commenced. So it is at that stage when we begin the actual process of terminating or ending the relationship. It is not evidence that the marriage is dissolved or the partnership is dissolved. It is only the commencement of that process. 6 weeks after the decree nisi, the petitioner can apply for a decree absolute. And it is the decree absolute that really terminates the relationship. So that is the process, right? Grounds for divorce or dissolution, application, consent or agreement, decree nisi, and decree absolute. Then legally the relationship is ended. The part of this process that becomes important to you as a forensic accountant is when there are disagreements about financial issues. So one of the parties, whether we're talking about the petitioner here or the respondent, at any stage can bring a claim for financial remedies. So this is where probably they think that some jointly owned assets need to be fairly shared, or they are going to make a claim for maintenance payment and other things. So if there are any financial issues related to the parties or the respondent and the petitioner, then your services as a forensic accountant may be required. If financial remedies are requested, or if a claim for financial remedies are made, that could be through the court system, or that could be through other out-of-court settlement procedures. So let's assume that there is a divorce proceeding going through, or there is a dissolution proceeding going through, and let's assume that there is a claim for financial remedies. That claim, as I said, could be made and settled out of court. So the parties may informally agree, or they may go through mediation or arbitration or through collaborative law. But you can see why the services of a forensic accountant may be required, because we may have to trace some assets, we may have to ascertain whether both parties are telling the truth, we may have to obtain facts about who owns what and all that. So even if there is a resolution outside the court system, both parties usually, because they'll be tending to use the services of a solicitor, both parties tend to appoint a forensic accountant to analyze the information that will be provided by the other party. So wife and husband will each have their solicitors, and each of their solicitors would appoint you, or would appoint a forensic accountant, so that they can really analyze the information available about their client and information they receive from the other party, to ensure that the truth is what we're talking about and the facts are what they are. Okay, so you may be a party appointed expert helping either party through the resolution process. But sometimes the disagreement is not lending itself to being resolved out of court, and therefore the parties may resort to going to court. Again, if they go to court, the court, of course, would have a process, and there are 3 possible key stages that we could be going through here. We're going through the first directions appointment, where the judge checks to see that both parties have provided the right information, and then the judge would usually recommend that this is settled out of court. In fact, before we even proceed to, that should say the final hearing, not financial hearing. Before we proceed to the final hearing, the court or the judge will check to see at least the parties have attempted a form of mediation. So it is only when the judge cannot resolve or suggest that the parties resolve the issue outside the court that we'll go to a final hearing. Well, this says financial hearing. Take it to mean final hearing. So now let's assume that indeed the parties have not been able to resolve their differences financially, and we have to go to a final hearing. Well, some of the key things that you'll be involved in if you were appointed a single joint expert. So a single joint expert is you're kind of looking at the full facts, of course, and you're advising the judge as to what your expertise tells you are the facts and the best way of resolving this, right? So you have your opinion. Of course, before you get to that stage, you would have recourse to all the relevant information. So the key document that the litigants will prepare will be the Form E, which is going to help the court understand their financial position. So every asset they own, all their income, all their financial circumstances, anything that is relevant in helping the court understand their financial wealth or the financial position has to be included on the Form E. And there your expertise will be required, right, to scrutinize the information to see if it is truthful or if it has the complete information that needs to be there. Well, attached or in addition to the Form E, the parties will have to provide all the evidence. So their bank statements, their tax returns, any proof of ownership of assets or wealth will have to be added to the Form E. And your expertise will be required because you're checking to see that both parties have been very truthful and the information that you have in front of you is as reliable as can be. Well, one side or one issue that usually pops up frequently will be instances where the parties own assets that do not have a readily available market value. So if any investments or any properties will have to be valued, then we need a valuation. And there you come onto the scene, helping the courts or the parties value the investments that are at stake. What if that is a business? So you can see if you have privately owned businesses, if you have small entities that are not listed, partnerships and all that, then your business valuation skills will be very, very invaluable here. Again, you have to also check to see if you can identify all the incomes and gains that need to be disclosed. And there could be other technical things like how do you divide or transfer ownership, partition the assets in a reasonable way that does not create any unfavorable long-term consequences for, say, the business or the partners. Can you imagine? So let's say if one of the parties is a partner to a business, so they are a partner in a partnership, and we need to ascertain their share of the partnership. Well, that's one problem. But after we've valued their share of the partnership, how do we take money out of the partnership in the best possible way to not impact on the continuity of the business? So there are many other implications that may come to the fore that the court would rely on your expertise for guidance. So these are the classic things that you'll be involved in. Therefore, as usual, when you are called onto the scene, you have to go through your client acceptance procedures, check the instructions that you're given, and make sure there are no conflicts of interest and so on and so forth. Think carefully about how you would price or charge, because if you were appointed a party expert before going to court, remember that could lead to continuing, and there could be other long-term tasks and advice. So be careful about how you word your terms of agreement and all that. And you've got to be quite analytical as usual, because you're pursuing the truth. And if there are any signs that one of the parties is hiding the truth, then you may be having to trace hidden assets that may not just be here, but maybe abroad or in tax havens. It could the reach could be quite broad. So you really have to think carefully when you're accepting such a role. And again, check to see what the assets and the properties or the businesses that could come up in the tasks are. Do you have the expertise to be able to value them, reliably estimate reasonable values, and so on and so forth? Could there be complex tax implication or financial advice about how to extract money out in the form of dividends, or what are the transfer implications? There's going to be some capital gains, and so on and so forth. So you really have to scope out the engagement before you accept it. And when you accept it, you will have to do a good job and help these partners who are usually at one of the most stressful times in their lives. So I hope this gives you an overview and you'll enjoy reading a bit around it and getting ready for our Spot the Era activity. All the best.